Hi there, welcome to my YouTube channel Dhyani classes. If you are watching my video for the first time, do subscribe my channel, hit the bell icon so that you get notified whenever new video will be uploaded. So in today's video we will cover the second part of the chapter We Are Not Afraid to Die If We Can Be All Together, written by Gordan and Alan East from class 11 CBSE. So let's get started. Somehow I managed to stretch canvas and secure waterproof hatch covers across the gaping holes. So here he is saying that with the help of canvas, he covered most of the damaged part as well as gaping holes, and some water continued to stream below, but most of it was now being deflected over the side. That means as he covered most of the damaging holes and damaging part of the ship, but some amount of water is still coming in and some were diverted to the other side. The more problems arose when our hand pumps started to block up with the debris floating around the cabins and the electric pump short-circuited. So here he is saying that he started facing more problems because hand pump was not functioning well and it blocked up with the debris floating around. That means there were small pieces of wood floating around the cabin and suddenly electric hand pump short-circuited, so they were not able to use hand pump because of short-circuit. The water level rose threateningly, so he got frightened because water level was continuously rising up, and further he says, back on deck I found that our two spare hand pumps had been wrenched overboard. So here the narrator is saying that he got two spare hand pumps so that he could pump more water, but those hand pumps had been wrenched overboard. That means those pumps pulled out of their position and they could not use them, and along with the forestay sail, the jib, the dinghies and the main anchor. So as you know that the spare hand pump had been removed along with the other equipment due to immense force of the waves such as a rope, jib, the dinghies. That means the small open boat and the main anchor. So everything was out of order. Then I remember we had another electric pump under the chart room floor. So later on he remembered that they had one more electric pump under the chart room floor. So what do you mean by chart room? Chart room refers to a room on a ship where charts and other things can be discussed. I connected it to an out pipe and was thankful to find that it worked. So here he was so happy that at least he had an electric pump and it was working excellently, and he pumped out more water from the ship. The night dragged on with an endless, bitterly cold routine of pumping, steering and working the radio. So here he is saying that the night dragged on with an endless, that means the whole night they had worked continuously with difficulties, and it was bitterly cold. That means it was too cold and they were continually pumping the water and steering the wheel and work on the radio. We were getting no replies to our mayday calls. So here they were trying to do their best to pull out water from the ship as well as looking for help through radio, but they got no reply because everything was completely out of order. So what do you mean by mayday call? That means an distress call that is used to signal a life-threatening or an emergency call. And further he says, which was not surprising in this remote corner of the world. That means they were in a remotest part of the world, and he knew that mayday call would never reach the station because the weather was so bad. Sue's head had swollen alarmingly. She had two enormous black eyes, and now she showed us a deep cut on her arm. So here he is talking about his daughter Sue, whose head was now more swollen because of the injury, and she had two enormous black eyes. That means her both eyes were also got swollen, and now she showed us a deep cut on her arm. That means she had a deep cut on her arm due to injury. When I asked why she hadn't made more of her injuries before this, she replied, I didn't want to worry you when you were trying to save us all. So here the narrator is saying that when he asked her daughter why she hadn't made more of her injuries before, that means he asked why she didn't mention her injuries earlier. So she replied, I didn't want to worry you when you were trying to save us all. That means she did not want to disturb her father as he was working very hard to save all of them. By morning on January 3rd, the pumps had the water level sufficiently under control for us to take 2 hours rest in rotation. So here the water level was under control by January 3rd, and all of the crew members were able to take a rest one by one for 2 hours. But we still had a tremendous leak somewhere below the water line, and on checking I found that nearly all the boat's main rib frame were smashed down to the keel. So here the narrator is saying that but we had a tremendous leak, that means still there was a leak somewhere below the water line and a good amount of water was still coming inside. And further he says, I found that nearly all the boat's main rib frame were smashed down to the keel. That means when he started checking how the water is still coming inside, he found that the main frame, rib frame of the ship is even the base of the ship were broken. In fact, there was nothing holding up a whole section of the starboard hull except a few cupboard partitions. So here he is saying that the only few cupboard partitions were holding the starboard hull unbroken. That means the main body of the ship was safe just because of the cupboard partition was very strong, but that too could not long lasting. We had survived for 15 hours since the wave hit. The wave walker wouldn't hold together long enough for us to reach Australia. So here he is saying that it was almost 15 hours now from the wave had damaged the wave walker and condition of the ship was so bad. So further he says the wave walker wouldn't hold together long enough for us to reach Australia. That means the narrator was sure that most of the part of wave walker got broken due to powerful waves and it could not be holding us together till they reach Australia, and the ship would certainly break down before they reach in Australia. I checked our chart and calculated that there was two small islands a few hundred kilometers to the east. So here the narrator started checking charts and calculating where he could take his ship safely, and finally he found out that there are two small islands a few hundred kilometers to the east. That means he got to know that there are two islands and located a few hundred kilometers away from their current location. One of them, Isle Amsterdam, was a French scientific base. So here there were two small islands which were located a few kilometers away, and they got to know that there was a small island named Isle Amsterdam, and that island was a French scientific base. And further he says our only hope was to reach these pinpricks in the vast ocean. So here they had only hope was to search one of these islands located in the huge ocean. But unless the wind and sea abated so we could hoist sail, our chances would be slim indeed. So here he is saying that if the wind and sea abated so we could hoist sail, that means if the wind and sea become less bad, then they could move ahead without any difficulties and would be able to reach on time these islands. The great wave had put on auxiliary engine out of action. And further he is saying that the immense force of the waves had damaged secondary engine of the wave walker and auxiliary engine was not functioning at all. On January 4, after 36 hours of continuous pumping, we reached the last few kilometers of water. So here he is saying that we had been continuously pumping the water since January 4 and it's been 36 hours now, and we reached the last few centimeters of water. That means the water was only a few centimeters left to be pumped out. And further he says, now we had only keep the pace with the water still coming in. So as they were working hard to pump out the water, but still they had to pump out the water which was coming in from the damaged part of the ship. We could not set any sail on the main mast. So here he is saying that they were not able to set sail on the main mast, and pressure on the rigging would simply pull the damaged section of the hull apart. So here he is saying that they put pressure on rigging. That means they put the pressure on ropes and wires that were supporting the structure of the wave walker, and if he puts more pressure on rigging, it would damage section of the hull apart. That means it would damage the whole body of the ship. And further he says we hoisted the storm jib and headed for where I thought the two islands were. So later on they hosted the storm jib. That means they raise or uplift the storm jib as flag and headed for where I thought the two islands were. That means after raising the storm jib they started moving towards where he thought these two small islands were located. Mary found some corned beef and cracker biscuits and we ate our first meal in almost 2 days. So here he is saying that it was almost 2 days they had eaten nothing because they were struggling with water and facing life-threatening dangerous situation. And later on his wife found corned beef and cracker biscuit and they had their first meal in 2 days. And further he says, but our respite was short-lived. That means they felt relief for only for a moment because something was about to happen next. At 4 p.m. black clouds began building up behind us. Within the hour, the wind was back to 40 knots and the sea were getting higher. So here he is saying that again 4 p.m. black clouds approaching behind them, and within the hour the wind was back to 40 knots. That means wind was blowing with 75 km per hour of speed, and the weather worsening again, and sea level started increasing higher than earlier. The weather continued to deteriorate throughout the night, and by dawn on January 5th our situation was again desperate. So here he is saying that the weather continued to deteriorate throughout the night. That means the weather was becoming progressively worse and scary, and by dawn on January 5th our situation was again desperate. That means the weather got worse, and by the early morning of January 5th the situation was very bad and distressed. And further he says, when I went in to comfort the children, John asked, Daddy, are we going to die? I tried to assure him that we could make it. So when he went back to his children to look how they are doing or how their condition was, his son Jonathan asked him a question, Daddy, are we going to die? So he was so frightened and wanted to know if they were all going to die, because he got to know again the weather was becoming dangerous. And in reply his father assured him that we are not going to die, and very soon we will find a safe place or an island and everything will be alright. And further he is saying, but Daddy, he went on, we aren't afraid of dying if we can be all together, you and Mummy, Sue and I. So here the narrator is saying that despite of life-threatening alarms, his son Jonathan showed courage and said he is not afraid to die if we can all be together. That means he is not afraid if he is with his mother, father and sister Sue, and they all are together. I could find no words with which to respond. So the narrator got surprised and he was not able to utter a word because of these powerful words and support being extended by his son. And further he says, but I left the children's cabin determined to fight the sea with everything I had. That means immediately he filled with a determination to fight back and left the children's cabin in order to save his family from the dangerous waves. To protect the weakened starboard side, I decided to have to. So here he was trying to best possible way to protect the weakened starboard side. That means he wanted to protect a broken area of the boat from where a huge amount of water was coming in. So he decided to have to. That means he wanted to park the ship in the ocean so that he can examine broken part of the ship to improvise it. And further he is saying, with the undamaged port hull facing the oncoming waves, using an improvised sea anchor of heavy nylon rope and two 22-liter plastic barrels of paraffin. So he used an undamaged portion of the ship and made an improvised sea anchor using heavy nylon rope and 22 liters of plastic barrels of paraffin. He decided to park the boat for a while. So I hope you like the video. For more informative videos, do subscribe my channel, hit the bell icon so that you get notified whenever new video will be uploaded. So thank you so much for watching once again. Stay safe, stay healthy.